Welcome back to Poprageous. I'm Danny Alex. Godzilla Minus One, another city-destroying saga by our favorite prehistoric reptilian monster. But this one is not from Hollywood. It's from Japan. Written and directed by Takashi Yamazaki, a writer and director who has a history of making well-rounded movies, and Godzilla Minus One is no exception.
All right. I am looking forward to this.
At the end, I'll give you my score out of 10, so stick around for that.
Hey, I'm a 10. I'm a 10.
This is the kind of movie that Hollywood has tossed to the side as it pursues socially divisive, bloated, and spectacle-driven movies that lack genuine and relatable human emotions. Godzilla Minus One is beautifully written with a straightforward and well-constructed story that knows when to have dialogue and when to allow for quiet moments to let the visuals speak for themselves and tell the story. It's a movie where no one asks for their pronouns or has an oddly placed gay relationship for the sole purpose of just having a gay relationship to prove how modern the writers and studios are.
Hello, Hollywood?
Godzilla Minus One has so many things that need mention to give director Takashi Yamazaki full credit for making an amazing movie. And I'm starting with the music. It was simply excellent and was easily a high point. It heightened the tension and gave the feeling of an impending doom by using minor and diminished chords strung together brilliantly to add a sense of anxiety with the imminent attack by our 500-foot antagonist. It magnified the emotional beats and kept you invested in the story, similar to how Christopher Nolan uses music to fully immerse the audience into a scene, adding fullness and its own set of emotional layers. So the movie starts with our protagonist, Shikishima, a Japanese kamikaze pilot near the end of World War II, flying onto a remote island. He claims his fighter plane had mechanical problems, so he was unable to carry out his mission. But in reality, it was fear. Godzilla attacks the island, and he has a chance to use his plane to shoot the monster, but he pauses, and most of the people on the island are killed. Now, this is the setup for the internal emotional subplot for Shikishima that eventually ends with him going on a similar mission, a kamikaze flight into the mouth of Godzilla. The story uses a well-designed storyline to add strong human relationship elements with a clearly defined plot and emotional subplots. It never strays into unnecessary social commentary that disengages the audience from the movie and is the reason why so many Hollywood movies are failing today. This is a movie that knows the story it wants to tell, what it wants to do, and how it wants to do it. Director Takashi Yamazaki places focus on the characters to create an engaging storyline that runs parallel to the main conflict with Godzilla. It's a story about a man, woman, and a young girl who meet by chance and have their own inner conflicts to deal with. It's not a complicated story, but that's what makes a movie like this so hard to write. A clean and focused story that balances human-based story elements, allowing each to have their own space within the story. It shows the burgeoning relationship between the two protagonists and one of the most adorable 2-year-olds you'll ever see in a movie. The main character was set up beautifully with his obvious hatred towards Godzilla,
Die, reptile!
along with his internal one, deep emotional turmoil as he deals with the death of his fellow servicemen that he blames himself for. Yamazaki wasn't scared to portray him as a flawed yet strong father figure, another character type that Hollywood has decided to just toss to the side. Godzilla Minus One is a movie that knows what it was setting out to do and did it with well thought out visuals, something that was also extremely well done, the special effects, cinematography, and sets. The cinematography uses camera angles and lighting that originates from the protagonist's perspective that magnifies the overall effect, creating a stunning realistic view from the ground. There was one shot in particular that had the giant plume of smoke from Godzilla's heat blast with Godzilla in the foreground and the shot coming from the perspective of a human looking towards the plume. It looked amazing and was obvious that the director and cinematographer spent a lot of time mapping out each shot within a scene to give the audience the size and scope of what was happening. The special effects were overall pretty darn good, especially when you think that the movie had a budget of only $15 million. Hey, Bob Iger, Kevin Feige, did you hear that? It shows that making a great movie has nothing to do with spending $400 million.
Fine.
The pacing was spot on, allowing for emotional ups and downs. It had the perfect balance of fast and slow-moving scenes that maintained a roller coaster ride of emotions while fitting in compelling subplots. It uses a clearly defined 3-act structure with the right amount of emotional tension to give the subplots adequate time to develop and find a comfortable space within the movie, complementing the plot and final climactic scene. It gave us a chance to care for the characters within a storyline that was tightly wrapped together with the final battle with Godzilla. Interestingly enough, there was a reveal that the main protagonist was most likely going to survive when they mentioned there was no ejection seat in kamikaze planes earlier in the movie. There was no purpose for this information to be revealed, so as a screenwriter, I took it as a Chekhov's gun plot device, a screenwriting technique that states any device that plays a major part in the third act must be introduced in the first or second act for it to have credibility. You'll also notice that the first shot in the first scene has a close-up of the bomb under the plane as it lands. Another reference the writer cleverly makes to point to a bomb and that it will be a major plot device to play a significant role later in the movie. This is the kind of writing that gives the story credibility by cleverly adding in subliminal clues to how the story may unfold. But there are a couple of disappointing things that I found, and it's maybe more a question of preference more than anything else. The ending was an emotional and well-constructed scene that saw all of our protagonists reunited. It was satisfying, but stories have more meaning if one of the protagonists does not survive. If everyone survives, nothing changes, minimizing the stakes and everything the characters went through. The characters that start the movie are alive at the end of it.
That accounts for everyone.
In the final scene, we also see that Godzilla isn't really dead as we see him sink underwater. A story without change or consequence can feel less complete. Tragedies almost always have a longer lasting effect on the audience if there are real consequences to the story and makes the plot feel more relevant. The other issue I had, and I think it's almost a constant in most Godzilla movies, is Godzilla's actual motivation for attacking and killing the people of Japan. It's unclear why he does what he does, and without a clearly defined motivation, it doesn't give Godzilla a reason for existing. Characters without logical motivation can make for a less compelling conflict, not fully understanding why the antagonist does what he does. Where does his anger come from, and why does he hate humans, and specifically Japan? It would have been a good idea to show what's at the center of all of his rage. Takashi Yamazaki set out to create a compelling human story that was the central emotional hook to keep the audience interested in what could have turned out to be just another Godzilla movie. And Lord knows we've had lots of those. It was a story about people that find each other in interesting ways as they work on their personal struggles and deal with a massive apocalyptic event. I commend the entire production team that put this movie together. Takashi Yamazaki committed himself to developing a well-rounded story with characters you could commit to and even shed a tear for before it was all said and done. It's the kind of movie that Hollywood has completely forgot how to make and represents a more traditional style of writing and filmmaking that will never go out of style. On a scale of 1 to 10, I'm giving Godzilla Minus One a score of 8.5. If you like what you heard, I thank you for watching and invite you to subscribe and join the Poprageous community. And if you didn't like what you heard, well, I thank you all the same. And we'll see you in our next video.